Okay, welcome to the Otherppl podcast. I'm Brad Listi. I'm your host. It is Sunday. There's a Sunday episode this week. There's something happening here on the Otherppl show. I'm very excited about it. I am launching today a brand new series on the podcast. It's a bit of an experiment, and it is something that I have wanted to do on this show for a long time, and I finally got it together. I'm finally doing it. The series is called Character Studies, and in this new series, which I think is going to be happening on Sundays, maybe not every Sunday, but on Sundays, there will be character study episodes in which I will be interviewing civilians, which is to say, these are not authors, these are not journalists, these are not media figures of any kind. These are people who have nothing to promote, and they are appearing on this program anonymously. I'm interested in just talking to people who don't have any kind of agenda other than to share their stories. And I think that it's useful to hear these stories. If you're a writer and you're listening to this show, these episodes might provide insight into the hearts and minds and lives of people to whom you would otherwise not have access. And, if I'm thinking about the origins of this show and the name of this show, it's called the Otherppl podcast, which is a bit of an odd name choice. And in the beginning, I didn't think too much about it. I was just like, I'm going to be talking to other people. But I think if I go back even further, I remember making a joke about wanting to start a magazine called Otherppl Magazine as opposed to People Magazine. This is years ago. And I wanted to, the joke was that it would just be about people who would normally never show up in a magazine for any reason. And this is kind of the realization of that vision, albeit in a different media, or medium, I should say. But I'm very excited about it. And so far, I have conducted several of these interviews, and they have exceeded my expectations. Because going into it, I didn't know quite how it would go. And the challenge all the way along was, how do I book a show like this? How do I find guests? Part of the reason, let's be honest, part of the reason, or most of the reason why people talk to me on this podcast is because they have something to sell, right? But with character studies, there's none of that. It's just, you got to be willing to spend an hour and change in my company, and you have to be willing to talk. So where would I find guests? That was always the issue. So what I did was I reached out to friends, and I reached out to some Otherppl Patreon supporters and newsletter subscribers, and I just asked if they would refer me to people who might be a good interview subject and who would be willing to talk with me. And so far, so good. But in order for this series to really manifest and to really become a consistent thing, I am going to need more guests. So again, it's got to be a non-writer. All of the interviews are anonymous, first name only. This isn't about self-promotion or recognition. It's about conversation and hopefully connection. So if you're out there and you know somebody who would be a good guest for this character study series and would be willing to talk with me, I don't care who they are. They could be 95 years old. They could be 35 years old. They could be 25 years old. They could be in the United States. They could be in Germany. They could be in Japan. I don't care. They do have to speak English fluently. So if you know somebody who would be willing to talk with me for this series, who is good in conversation, who would be a great character study guest, please email me. The address is letters@otherppl.com, letters@otherppl.com. Let me know, introduce me, and we'll see what happens. So I think that does it for the preliminaries, and now it is time to get to the very first character study in the history of this show.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm 34 years old, and I am a customer success manager in the tech industry. So I'm originally from New Jersey. I was born and raised there, lived there till I was 27. Then I spent some time moving from city to city. I spent some time in San Francisco, was in Denver for a year, and then I moved to Austin, and I've been here almost 6 years now.
What part of Jersey are you from?
So I was born in Summit, New Jersey. So that's like central North Jersey. And then, but after I was about 5, I moved to the shore. So I was in a really tiny beach town where there's kind of like a group of beach towns along the shore in central Jersey. And I grew up 3 blocks from the beach most of my life. So it's, a lot of people have misconceptions about what the Jersey Shore is because of the TV show. But, we always say that the people on the TV show are the tourists that come. It's not super representative of what it's like to be a local there. So there's a lot of local pride in that area. Just being very proud of growing up in the beach town. A lot of skaters, surfers, all that kind of stuff.
What did your folks do that had you out on the shore in Jersey?
Um, I think that the reason that they decided to move there was because they actually used to visit when they were in college. They would spend their summers at the Jersey Shore. And I think it was just kind of like a goal of theirs to eventually move to that area someday. They used to live up further north in Jersey, and my parents both worked at IBM because my grandpa worked at IBM. And then my dad kind of went more into like consulting for more like financial related things at abandoned property work, that kind of stuff. I don't have the best, the best knowledge of what exactly my parents did, but my mom also she worked at IBM, and then she had I have one sibling, a sister. She had us pretty late in life. My parents got married young. My mom was 21 when she got married to my dad, who was 23, and then didn't have my sister until she was 36, 37. So they spent about 15, 16 years of their lives just being like working professionals, you know, going up the ranks, I suppose. And then my mom actually went to get her master's degree in nutrition from Rutgers while she was pregnant with my sister. So they were doing a lot before we came into the picture.
But it seems like a solid situation. Like parents are like they got their act together, professional. They even had like the good sense to like just be married and hang out and work and get their financial house in order before they even had kids. Like I feel like
Yeah,
generationally, like a lot of people, I guess your parents they're not baby boomers,
they
are they?
are they
Oh,
are
they
baby
are.
boomers. Yeah, they were born. My dad was born in 51. So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, yeah, but usually people of that generation had kids like right out of the chute. They just
Hmm.
like they get married in their early 20s, and by the time they're like 26, they've got 3 kids, but your
Yeah.
parents waited.
Yeah, they waited quite a long time, and it of course benefited my sister and I because we grew up in a pretty financially stable household. We lived in a nice area, so I call that kind of that Jersey Shore area. It's like living in a little bit of a bubble. There's not a lot of diversity there. There's not a lot of access to different different people from different backgrounds, even just like different food types, those kinds of things. Like we had Chinese food, and then a Thai place opened up like when I was in my late teens. But outside of that, there was just not much cultural diversity in that area. And then when you kind of step out of it and you move away from that area, it can be a little bit of a shock, especially if you are. I never thought that I was going to live in a city just because I was a little bit of a homebody growing up and didn't really like going out that much. I didn't like going into New York City. I felt uncomfortable there. It was like a little dirty to me. So the fact that I've now lived in multiple cities and am comfortable and wish to stay in one probably is not something I would have expected or my parents would have expected when I was younger.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was. I
Yeah.
never thought I would live in Los Angeles. Like if you would have told me you're going to end up living your life in Los Angeles when I was like 17 or, I would have been like, no, you're crazy. I'm going to
Right.
live in the mountains somewhere or something like that. But
Yeah, and it's interesting actually because I the towns that I grew up in were so small. So like the people that I went to school with, like my elementary school, which was a K through 8 school, you know, graduating class of 17 or 18 kids, and we pretty much were together the entire time we were in that school. So it was very small, tight-knit town. You're around the same people, and a lot of those people end up staying in the area their entire lives. They find somebody, they settle down, they have their kids there, and then they stay near their parents, and they don't end up leaving. But some of us do. I don't know of many other people that I grew up with who are as far away as Texas from New Jersey. So,
okay, so you said you were kind of a homebody as a kid. Like what else? Like, how else would you characterize yourself as a child? Like temperamentally, personality wise.
I would say probably before high school, I probably got on everybody's nerves quite a bit. I was a bit of an annoying, stubborn, little bit precocious child. I was the younger sibling too, so I think there's a little level of being spoiled there. And then once I got into high school, I kind of switched up a little bit. I was around a lot more people once I got into high school, so just became much more social. Was joining a lot of like clubs and after school activities that I actually had interest in. My parents always threw me into like recreation, soccer, softball. I tried lacrosse. I did basketball, like everything, but I have never been a big sports person. The one thing I did enjoy doing my entire childhood was horseback riding, and New Jersey is very good for that. But once I got into high school, I was in choir, I was in theater club, I did a cappella choir, I was the art club president. So I very much have like a artistic kind of background. Like I'm a creative person, and even now that I've transitioned and gone into working in the tech field, I still, art is still important to me. I still make a point to have a hobby. I do sculpture. I like to take the opportunity to, paint or draw things when I have the opportunity. So, yeah.
You kind of exude competence and like just having your shit together. Is that a ruse? Is that how you are? You just seem like you've got it together.
Um, I have it together in the ways that there's always other things I need to get my life together in. But I think once I kind of moved out on my own, and I live alone and I have the two dogs. So, it's kind of like having to, I'm really only solely responsible for myself. I don't really have anybody else who lives here to back me up or support me. My family is halfway across the country. I have a great friend group here who would be here for me if like I needed it. But, even just things like the other week I got the flu, and I was curled up in bed thinking that I shaking with fever and thought I was going to pass away, and I was like, oh gosh, I still have to take the dogs out 3 times a day. So
Right,
I mean
right.
it's all on me. So I have to keep it together, and I think that I always was a little bit like that. My sister and my cousin used to crack jokes that I acted like a little mother when I was a kid. I was always bossing people around, and I used to carry my friend's lunchbox for him, and all this kind of stuff. So I was
Wait,
always kind of,
why did you carry his lunchbox?
honestly, I don't know. I think it was just one of those little friendship situations where he and I were best friends at the time, and he just kind of followed me wherever I went. I would help him out with anything if I saw some level of like incompetence that was going on, and he just kind of followed my lead like a puppy, I suppose, a little bit.
Did he have a crush on you?
I don't think so. I mean, we were in kindergarten, so it's one of those kinds of situations. We also lived like 3 houses away from each other, so I was always going over to his house after school, and we would watch TV or play video games. And every time his grandma would make us malted milk, so it was like I have these like very specific memories of those kinds of things. But we were kind of just like two peas in a pod for a while.
And it sounds like you had a happy family life growing up, stable situation, good parents. You got along with your sibling, your sister?
Yeah, I get along with my sister. You know, it's hard being so far away. I unfortunately I think that part of the reason why I act like I have my stuff together is because my home life really wasn't very stable. I my mom, she's an alcoholic, so with that kind of in the mix, that got pretty serious for me when I was about 12, 13 years old. So dealing with an alcoholic parent, somebody struggling with addiction, especially like kind of in those really formative years, I spent a lot of time just like alone. I would go to school, come home, lock myself in my room, and spend the entire night like on the computer. So, if I wasn't out doing some other kind of planned activity, like for one of my clubs, I was home and I was on the computers. So I spent a lot of time online growing up, and you know, avoiding my mom. So,
Did she ever get sober?
no, to this day she is not. There were periods of time, throughout my time living with her when she started really heavily drinking, and then up to the point where I moved out, where she had been in inpatient rehab and an outpatient rehab, AA, like multiple times she tried to do this. She even was in Florida for several months, at a rehab clinic, but the periods of sobriety that she had never really lasted much longer than about a year. So it was always that build up or that excitement when you're a kid of like, oh, I have my mom back, like we don't have to deal with this anymore. And then when the drinking starts again, it's like, it's just a letdown. So I think that part of growing up with that as well, it leads you to not be very trustworthy of other people, of, when people are going to say that they're going to do something, and then like just not having high expectations for other people when they promise that they'll do something. That's definitely something that's impacted like my personal relationships as well. So I always just feel like I'm I can be dependent on myself. I can trust myself. I trust my dogs. But when it comes to other people, I kind of I don't get my hopes too high. So
And if somebody like in some way transgresses, like they're late, like 15 minutes, you're like, it's over. We're done.
yeah. I mean, I was dating somebody for a little bit, and like I try to be as punctual as possible. And we were going to go see The Brutalist, which is a 4-hour movie. We go to the Alamo Draft House down here in Texas. I know it's a chain pretty most places now, but it started in Austin, so we have quite a few of them. And so I go to most of the Alamos that exist in Austin, so I know exactly how long it takes to get there. They do a 30-minute pre-show, and then the trailers start. And he picked me up maybe like 15 minutes late, and I could just feel like the anxiety building. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late, like he's letting me down, he hasn't done this before, like. And then I got in the car and I immediately said something, and I was like, we're going to be late. And like the entire vibe between both of us just shifted. So I was like, he hasn't really seen me like that, like where my anxiety is super high like that before. But
You're like, we're
when
gonna miss the previews.
right,
This isn't working out. I'm
I'm
really sorry.
yeah, we're gonna miss the pre-show, and that's real important to me, and you knew that. So
You're canceled.
yeah,
So okay, so this makes some more sense in terms of like how you've kind of got your act together. It's like a response maybe to the chaos of your mother's alcoholism. I'm just curious, like, what was your dad doing like, in relationship to your mom while she was struggling with addiction? I guess continues to struggle.
yeah, that's also it's an interesting relationship to witness for sure. There's a pretty extreme level of codependency there, and you know I think I think it's partially from the era that they grew up in. My dad had 5 sisters. His father was, in the Navy in World War II. So my grandma, his mother, took care of all the kids. She had her own job, and like they were just very loyal together. Both my grandparents on both sides, they were married until they passed. So I think there's like that innate sense of like we stick through it no matter what is going on. But also because my dad is from that kind of baby boomer era, they grew up where my mom is always doing his laundry, my mom's making his dinner. It's she was the one to do all of these like home kind of care needs, while he was the one that was just making the money pretty much. And she also stopped working to raise my sister and I. So she became a stay at home mom. So he was very highly dependent on her for that aspect of keeping life normal, while she was highly dependent on him for, financial stability. So it kind of continued into like they just feel completely stuck together. I don't think they technically would be able to do very well separated from each other. So there's kind of this relationship where there's codependency, but also he's enabling her addiction as much as he does not want to as much as he doesn't want his children to suffer through it, and he also suffers through it because it impacts all of us. It's very difficult for him to try to get her to do anything that she doesn't want to do, or if he says he's like, that's it, I'm leaving, he never has. It's just they're very, very highly codependent. So
Wow. Okay. And what about your sister? How does she relate to all this?
she and I are she and I are pretty similar on this, on how we feel about it. She is 3 years older than me, so she was, when my mom's drinking got very out of control, she was out the house all the time. She was out with her friends, she was, staying over places, she moved out as soon as she possibly could. So my the way that I kind of picture my teenage years growing up was I was always home unless I was doing like an activity or something. And my sister was always out of the house. So I think that she wasn't around it as much, although it did impact her because how could it not? But she wasn't really thinking about and processing her feelings towards it until much later in her life. I started therapy when I was 13 years old.
I
My
was
mom,
going to say
yeah,
the comfort with which you can like articulate this stuff. I feel like you've probably done some therapy.
yes, yeah. My mom put me in when I was 13. I said, why, what is this? Like, why do I need to do this? She's like, I just think you need it. She was right.
Well,
One of
she's also like, I'm hammered a lot. I think
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
you could use some help.
Yeah, right. She's like, you probably need somebody to talk to. And she is correct in that, I've always been like a very sensitive child. So probably need having somebody there to talk to in a professional capacity where, that conversation is, private and confidential, was very helpful for me, and being able to start processing like what was happening in my family life, and what being able to set up goals for where I wanted to see myself in the future to get away from that environment.
So what is like what did it look like when your mom, your mom is drinking and you're a kid? Like, is she just like passing out or is she getting like angry? People are different as drunks. Some drunks get real mean, others
Yeah.
are just like medicated and sloppy and then they fall asleep on the couch.
Yeah, no, she's a very mean drunk, so not pleasant to be around, and that is the reason why when, basically 4:35 p.m. would roll around, I was in my door, locked it, stayed in there the whole night, because that was always around the time when she would start drinking, was like right around 5 p.m. And I just had this really like finely tuned sense to be able to tell, like I could tell as soon as she had her first drink, like the physical signs that she would show, or I could smell it very easily. I don't know if I had started to train like my nose to pick up on it, but I could tell from like the way her eyes looked, the way that she was talking, the way her lips looked. Just if there was one weird thing she said, I'd be like, nope, I'm out of here, I'm staying in my room for the rest of the night. So it I wanted to stay away from her as much as possible because her drinking made me very angry when I was living with her, because I was frustrated. I was frustrated that, I was parentified as a child. I was frustrated that I didn't have a mom that I could depend on, and just that my home life couldn't be normal, because also she is a hoarder as well. So the atmosphere in my environment that I was living in was always very messy and chaotic as well. So there was no like, the only place of peace that I really could find was just being in my bedroom all the time. So, it was, and I wanted to avoid her because she was very, very willing to say like the nastiest possible thing to you for no reason. And I can get a little spicy myself if I'm in the mood. So that would, while you're not supposed to, egg on somebody in that state, like sometimes I really couldn't help it. So it would lead to confrontations that should have been avoided.
Would she ever, like, sober up in the morning and be like, "Oh, shit, I'm so sorry," like, any of that?
No, when she would get sober, it was just like she pretended like it didn't happen. It was very much a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde situation. And funny enough, because I did like theater and I do like theater, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was one of the shows that I did see. I believe it was off Broadway, but because we were in New Jersey, the off Broadway places there had a lot of folks who were just like extremely talented. So we got to see quite a lot of shows, and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was one of the ones I got to see. And she made it a point to inform me that the injection or whatever Dr. Jekyll was taking, it wasn't some like, crazy concoction that he came up. She was like, it's alcohol. Like he's turning into Mr. Hyde because he's drunk. And this is about alcoholism. And that's the way like she explained the show to me. So I was like, that makes a lot of sense because that is pretty much what I experience in my day-to-day life with her.
Wow, okay, so that's formative,
Yeah,
like, as
right.
a story, and you, you eventually graduate high school and go off to college and start this kind of migration away from home, which makes a lot more sense to me now that I've heard about, like, your mother's struggles. Where did you go to college?
I actually commuted. I went to a commuter college. So I started out at community college for the first couple years. So I still was living at home during that. I tried to transfer out to the University of Rhode Island for 6 months, which was about 4 hour drive away from where I lived, but couldn't hack it. Being the dorm lifestyle and whatnot.
Why?
I think I was just too used to being able to have my own space to decompress, have my privacy. And so sharing a room with a roommate was just too much. And, there was people wanted to go to frat parties all the time. And it was just a lot for me. It was not my cup of tea. So I ended up coming back home. I skipped a semester, just worked at a retail place that I had been working before I left. And then I transferred back into a college that had kind of a setup with the community college where it was one of those associates to bachelor's programs. So I got myself back in there, and that's how I completed college. And I was living at home the whole time.
You're like, "At least I have my room. I can lock the
Right.
door and just, like, have my space." You needed the space, and I can
Yeah.
imagine too, like, a a child of an alcoholic mother going off to college and everyone's, like, getting hammered and going to frat parties, that probably didn't appeal to you at all, it seems
Yeah,
like.
and I'm also a pretty highly like anxious person. I actually only within the last year I've been also diagnosed with ADHD and autism, which is more common for women as they get older. Like they know more about it now and know that it presents much differently, but I would go to these like really chaotic parties and just feel so out of place, like feel like I was crawling out of my skin. And I still get that sense sometimes when I go out places as a 34-year-old. If
Wait a minute, I might be autistic and have ADHD too.
yeah, you never know. I mean, it's really interesting because it is such like a wide spectrum. But I feel like if I had known that I had ADHD especially when I was like a teenager, it would have answered a lot of questions for me. If I could have like read more about it at the time and been medicated for it properly, like just some of the struggles that I would have when I was a teen and in college would have been a lot easier to go through. But yeah, I think that also made being away at college pretty difficult because I was around too many unfamiliar things. I My routine was just completely shifted and uncomfortable for me. And I'm very much big on routine. I need it to maintain like a level of mental stability. And I just didn't it just didn't jive well with me. I was in a very unfamiliar place and trying to do it all by myself. So it was just too much stress. I couldn't focus on my studies. I wasn't having a good time, so came back home.
Came back home. What did you study in school?
So I studied political science, and then I eventually graduated with a degree in national security studies. I wanted to go into the government and do something with computer security or intelligence analysis for like the NSA or CIA. But the same year that I ended up graduating from college with that degree was the same year that the Edward Snowden stuff came out. So, learning that the government was spying on its citizens and Patriot Act and all that kind of stuff made me very disillusioned with the government. So I decided to just kind of keep working the job that I had while I was in my last couple of years of college, which was at a tech company. I got that job actually just by a referral from an internet friend, and I went into it full time after I finished my degree, and then worked my way up the ranks within that company into a customer success position eventually. And I've since gone on to a different company working customer success, but that's kind of how the trajectory happened with my personal or professional career.
What is customer success? Just like customer service?
Yeah, a lot of people think it's that. It's more like account management. So I have an assigned portfolio of enterprise brand customers that purchase our, you know, services at our company. And these are the customers who are either, they're paying a lot of money to the company, or they have like a really large plan. So the idea is that because they have a complex and large setup, that they need the additional folks to help them with strategic planning and additional levels of support, or getting them in contact with our product teams, our engineering teams, those kinds of things. So the way that I talk about customer success, it's like a little bit of being like the center of a wheel, and then you're connected to all the different spokes within your organization, whether that's sales, product, platform team, engineering team, marketing team. And because I'm in that center, I can get my assigned book of customers, a higher tier of engagement from all of those people within my company so that they can be successful. We can, you know, be more aligned on what their business goals are. And really what we're tracked on is retention. So we want our customers to stay long-term customers, and providing them value and making sure that their voices, their feedback is heard. If they have issues, we escalate them. So I don't do any of the sales side. I work with coworkers who focus on sales and growth and those kinds of things. We're really just here to make sure that the customers are happy. So
So you basically started working in college and just transitioned into a professional life immediately after, and you've been going ever since.
that's right. Yeah.
And you eventually left the Jersey area, right? At
hmm
what point did you break off and start to go elsewhere?
So I ended up spending a lot of time out in San Francisco because I was in a long distance relationship with somebody who lived there. And we met on a gaming community, which what used to be a big part of my life, being involved in these various gaming communities. And I would spend 2 months at a time out in San Francisco, come back to New Jersey, then go back out there, spend another 2 months there. But when it kind of came time to decide whether we wanted to continue living separately, or combine our lives and move in together, I didn't want to move to San Francisco because I wasn't really loving it, and he didn't want to move to New Jersey. So we both agreed that Denver would be a good option because he was a software engineer and I worked remotely, so I could work anywhere. So Denver, was at the time, and I guess still is, an up and coming tech city. And so we found a spot to go there and lived there for about a year. Got my dog, my first dog,
What kind
and
of dog?
his name is Pierogi. He is a mutt, but he's got a lot of herding breeds in him. So cattle dog, Australian Shepherd, Border Collie, a little bit of Lab, Pointer. So he's very energetic. He's very intense and very athletic.
Pierogi, huh? Isn't that
Yep.
like was that a Polish
That's right. Yep.
delicacy?
Yeah. It's a pretty standard Polish food. It's like a little dumpling, basically. The very common way, Americanized way to eat it is like mostly potato and cheese in it. But you can also get various other fillings like kielbasa is a popular one, onion. You can get more sweet pierogies, so blueberry filled, cherry filled, all those kinds of things. But yeah, my mom, she is, I guess she would be second generation Polish immigrant. Both my grandparents were full on Polish. They would argue in Polish, speak in Polish to each other. We called them by their, you know, Polish the Polish grandma and grandpa names that we knew how to pronounce. So
Which were what? How do you say it?
yeah, so I called my grandpa Jaji and I called my grandma Bobby. And so the Polish word for grandma is babci, or babcia, but my sister and I couldn't pronounce it as babies. So we just went with Bobby. But
Okay.
yeah,
All right. So you're in Denver. You're with this guy. You got a dog. Things are happening, but then like this relationship did not last.
correct. Yeah. So after a year living together, we broke up, and my decision was either move back to New Jersey or go down to Austin. And Austin was where the headquarters was of the company that I was working for. I already had a friend group there that I met online years prior.
I keep hearing you say this. I feel like you've cultivated so many friendships online. That's very generationally
Yeah. Hmm.
like aligned. I feel like that's how people. I mean, that's how people look at us. We're talking online right
Yeah,
now.
exactly. It's so funny because I started joining like these online communities, gaming communities when I was 12, 13 years old. So I was started to have like these friendships with people that I met online, and I also had what I would call like kind of a persona online as well that was different from who I was in person.
Okay, so
So
how did it differ?
oh, I came across as somebody who just had a really bad attitude all the time. I was very prone to, getting into little internet flame wars, they would call them, or argue with somebody. But I was also 14 years old. So I was not only dealing with like my mom's alcoholism, so I had a lot of anger to get out,
I
but
was going
I
to
was
say,
I was a teenage girl. So, I was a little spicy online as a kid. And but yeah, no, I developed a lot of friendships with people. There's actually from one of my first gaming communities in the rhythm gaming community, there's still a group of people that we now have all migrated to this other platform called Discord, which is just kind of like a chatting service, but you can do video and play games on there. I'm still connected with those people that I met when I was 13, 14 years old, and we still talk and we're up to date with each other's lives. So, yeah, 20 years later, we still stay in touch, and they're all over the country and the world at this point.
wow, that's crazy. So I know nothing about this. Like this is like I think this came after I was an adult, and I don't know.
Mhm.
I just this missed me. So when you're in one of these gaming communities, can they see you, or is it anonymous?
They can only see you like if you were to do something like similar to like FaceTime, or if you were at the time we would do like Skype calls, or if you're streaming on Twitch, that platform. I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but sometimes
I've heard of
people
it.
will be on there and they'll have their webcam on. But most of the time, we were typing on forums. At the time, we started out on IRC, which is MIRC, Internet Relay Chat. Then we transitioned to other forms of communication. So we were just bopping around from there. A lot of the time we would do like voice only chatting. So using some programs where we could, kind of at the end of the night chat on there. A lot of people use that for gaming so that they could play video games with one another and, speak to their teammates. So, we did a lot of that kind of stuff. I
Was it a
didn't
lot of
meet.
was it a lot of nerds? I'm
Yeah. Oh
imagining
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. A
It
lot of
was like
nerds.
it was like you and a bunch of nerdy boys, right?
A lot of nerds, a lot of gamers. There were some other women who were involved in them too, but yeah, I was very used to being one of the only women in the group. So
Okay, and like I don't mean to be weird, but I do have to let people listening know that Sophia, you're a very beautiful woman. Like I feel like you would be in this gaming community with all these nerdy boys, and they would be like, "Oh my god."
well, I mean, I wasn't like on camera with them a lot too,
Okay,
and so I mean, they occasionally would see like pictures of me from time to time if I posted them, but it wasn't something that I was doing super regularly. But
but it can't be like the norm, is what I'm imagining. Like to have
probably not. I think that I often felt like I was living a double life for a long period of time, especially because the everything else in person hadn't really caught up to the idea of like, oh, it's normal to have online friends. I very much kept like that part of my life secret, like that I had internet friends or that I was on these communities because I wanted people in person to see me as like kind of a normal person in high school. Like I didn't want to be looked down upon in any way because I was bullied a lot as a kid.
for what?
So I was always like the black sheep. I was bullied for my weight. I was
What you
you
were
know
overweight,
yeah, I was an overweight kid pretty much throughout high school as well. So, that's always an easy
but you're
one to
not
pick on.
overweight at all now.
No, not now. But, back then, going through elementary school and high school as like the lone overweight person is not super easy. So I tend to get picked on for that a lot. And, I would do anything I could to try to lessen the amount of things that people could find out about me to pick on me for. So I was very protective of that side of my life. And I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but once it became more common, I guess, in the overall zeitgeist, I suppose, that people were developing online friendships with people they had never met in person, never seen before, but they were connecting over mutually shared interests. That was when I felt like I could be more open to say, like, oh, yeah, I have all these internet friends and I've been on these gaming communities and done all this stuff throughout my life. And, it's not anything to be ashamed of or embarrassed of anymore. I don't have to hide this from people that I meet. So, yeah,
It's just the way of the world now.
right,
But
exactly.
I feel like as an older person who sort of missed all this, I'm like, is it real? I have a less trusting. I don't know if that's the word for it, but I feel like I'm suspicious of relationships that might build entirely on a screen
Mm.
versus having to actually be IRL. And
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, we got a lot of like fear propaganda when I was a kid about like, don't talk to people on the internet. They're all predators. They're out to get you. But, of course, there are those people out there, but pretty much everybody across the world and country is just somebody like you and me. So I think that that's like 99% of the people that you're going to encounter when you are talking to somebody on the internet. It's not going to be just like some person with bad intentions. It's just another normal human being looking for a sense of connection and a way to share their mutually shared interests with you. And so, you never know who you might come across. It might be somebody who could be your best friend someday. So that's just the
did
way
it
I
ever
look at
get
it.
romantic? Did you ever meet somebody in like a gaming community and then suddenly you're like going out on dates or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my first long-term boyfriend I met on online. Most of my like long-term relationships were people I met through these gaming communities. The one that I moved to Denver with, we met on a gaming community, and then I had a different boyfriend that I lived with for a couple of years who we met on a gaming community. So, a lot of my most significant relationships that I've had started out on the internet.
on the internet? That's the way it goes.
Yep. And once people started getting familiar with like app dating and stuff where you start your talking phase or your relationship through an app, where two people who are there for the same purpose, it became less like taboo to be like, oh yeah, I have these relationships that started on gaming communities. So yeah.
Are you still gaming today? You're still
I'm not really. I kind of, once I moved from Denver and that breakup happened, I kind of transitioned away from that, from gaming and that whole lifestyle, and I came down here and I just really focused on my career. That was what I did. I wanted to like move up the ranks in my company, do as, make money, be able to be self-sufficient, spend time with my dogs, spend time with friends in person. So I really kind of switched focus, and spent much less time on these like gaming communities and speaking to people from those places. And
all these nerdy boys are just like, where'd
yeah,
she
right.
go? Where'd she
Yeah.
go?
Yeah, a lot of them knew why I was gone, but
Oh, okay.
it was sometimes I run into them, across the internet spaces, and we can catch up and whatnot. But I very much live a much more typical life, I suppose, of what you would think for like a single 34-year old. So
I feel like you're very businesslike. I have to believe that in these relationships, like when they end, is it you that's usually ending them? Have you ever not been the one who ended it?
most times, because a lot of the time I think that I one of the mistakes that I've always made in my relationships is that I just was trying to be with somebody that I could tolerate. And I think that is that's not the best way to go about it for a successful relationship. I would just be like, okay, can I tolerate this person like in my day-to-day life, even if I don't feel particularly passionate or romantic about them right now? So we'll keep chugging along, and hopefully we'll move on to the next phase, and we'll just be together forever, tolerating each other till the day I die. um, but
So
that
romantic.
right, that's not the way it should be. So they got more uncomfortable with how things would progress than I did, when things would kind of just like die down, and we weren't, you know, going out places anymore. We weren't, going on dates, and we were spending a lot of time separately. So they were a lot of the time the ones to end things, whereas I was just kind of complacent in the monotony of kind of a boring relationship. But those, I mean, that's for the best. It's also a learning experience. Like, now I know that I don't want to be with somebody that I only tolerate. I
You got to raise the bar a little
Yeah,
bit.
I have to raise the bar a little bit. It's difficult these days dating out here, and I find that it's Austin particularly is not doesn't have the best dating scene. There's
People say that about it. I feel like I've never heard someone say like the dating scene here is awesome. I feel like
yeah.
everywhere it sucks.
That's probably true. I think a lot of people are struggling with dating in general these days. It's really hard. And I think that app dating has kind of caused a little bit of an issue, because you feel like you have so many options out there. Like, you're just scrolling through pictures, and you're like, I need to find the best one. But then maybe you look on the app the second day, and you're like, oh, this one's slightly better than the one that I matched with yesterday. And it's like there's just never ending options, and
Yeah,
I
see,
think that
I
causes
missed all that.
issues. Yeah,
I missed
well,
all that.
you should be feel grateful that you did.
I was gonna say, I don't know that would be kind of a nightmare to just
Yeah,
be swiping and to be like, what is, and then texting with I guess you text with these people, you don't even know them, and you're trying to figure out if they're psychotic or
exactly. Right. Yeah, of like, are is this somebody I can trust? Is this somebody who's got their own shit together? Like, do they I try to figure out like what's their attachment style, because I've been burned by a lot of people that I've just been dating and whatnot. And hindsight's always 2020, but you look back and like try to think, how could I have recognized how this was going to end up? Like, were there any like specific signs that this person was going to treat me so badly? So it makes it like hardens you too to like the experience it after so many like times being let down and encountering all these different types of people who are just end up being the worst possible dudes that you could encounter.
you've had some of those?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been dating for on and off for years at this point. So I really have not had what I would consider like a serious long term relationship since I moved from Denver and I was with the person I live with. So it's been like a 6 year period of I've mostly been on my own. So
Do you have any regrets about ending the relationship in Denver?
no, I don't. I mean, he's the one who did want to end it, but we talked about it a little bit, and then after about a month, decided it was the right thing to do to part ways. And if I hadn't done that, like I would not have the life that I have now. I wouldn't be as independent as I am now. I really like came into my own after that happened because I was able to very much more recognize who I am, what my goals are. I got to get my dogs. Like I didn't have anybody that I had to worry about, living with or asking their permission for anything or, any of that kind of stuff. So, I personally, I enjoy living alone. I don't mind being single. I'm very content in that. But, I try dating from time to time and just to see kind of what's out there. And it'd be nice to find somebody who I'm compatible with, but it's hard to find the person who's like only going to add to your life and they're not going to, you know, frustrate me on a daily basis. So,
Got to be able to like really, really tolerate them. Just
yeah,
like incredibly tolerable.
the highest level of tolerance. They have to be the most tolerable.
So you seem like you're a professional success. I can imagine you're a standout employee. Like you get your shit done, you show up on time, you're accountable, right? Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's pretty accurate. I've been at my current company almost 4 years now. I'm kind of top of the totem pole in my organization and, you know, consistently always a high performer. I got to go to our what they call like they call it winter circle. It's like a president's club type vacation. So they send the top performers in sales and customer success out to an all expenses paid vacation. And I got recognized for that, which is always really nice. And
Where'd you get to go? Where'd you go?
I went to Cancun, so it was my first
Oh,
time. It was nice though. It was fun. And yeah, it's they my I there's a mutual level of respect between me and my leadership team where they trust me to do the work that needs to be done, do it well, and as a result, I don't get bothered too much about, you know, like you need to fix this, you need to fix that, or there's no like threat upon my job or my standing in the company because, they they trust and believe that I'll, you know, do what I need to do.
you'll do it. Yeah. Well, do you have a goal, like a long-term goal professionally that you are trying to chase down?
Yeah, I'm working into more of a leadership position. So that if things continue to go the way that they are this year, I'll probably see that promotion sometime this year. And then, I would like to continue doing that. I know a lot of people tend to say they're like, "Oh, you actually want to be a manager?" That is because a lot of people hate management, but I personally love the aspect of being able to advocate for my coworkers and team members and create new processes that help them rather than harm them and kind of be that person in the middle who is connecting the dots between organizations and just doing some of that kind of work. So it would be nice to get out of the kind of day to day of portfolio management and customer management and be able to move into a role that has a little bit more responsibility, I suppose.
I feel like you're going to get there
I hope
for what
so.
it's worth.
I hope so.
I would bet on you. I feel like you're on your way. So,
Thanks.
no drugs or alcohol in your life? I mean, I would imagine you're probably a little bit reticent. Like, are you able to drink or
I do. Yeah. I They say that alcoholism skips generations. I don't know if that's necessarily so true. I've never, you know, I've never had a problem with alcoholism or with drinking alcohol. And it just going out, being in a city like Austin and being my age, it's hard to avoid as well because most of your friends when you're going out, there's so many restaurants, so many bars. That's like most of what the nightlife is in Austin. It's hard to avoid that, but I'm able to kind of have alcohol in my life without it being a problem. So yeah.
So just like what? You have like a glass of wine.
Yeah,
Like you
I
seem
mean, I love wine. I love going to like wine bars, tasting new wines. I'm a big fan of Fernet and Coke. If you've ever had it,
no,
um,
what is that?
it's an Italian digestif. It's one of those kind of like liquors that a lot of people like. Some people find it really disgusting, similar to like Jepson's Malort,
Is
but
it like licoricey? Is it
it
like
is. It's like a little licoricey. It's like there's like a eucalyptus type flavor to it as well. It's a little bit minty.
what's it
Um,
called again? Fernet?
Fernet Branca, yeah.
Fernet Branca. And it's like and you drink it after a meal.
I mean, traditionally, like some people would do that, but you can make it as a cocktail. It's actually a pretty popular cocktail in South America to have it with Coca Cola and then a lime. So it's to me very refreshing. One of my favorite cocktails. But
A refreshing beverage.
yeah, exactly.
And then no other drugs. Like, are you not a pothead or anything like that?
No, sorry.
Where are you at spiritually? I'm curious. Like, you raised. I'm trying to think. Polish. I guess that's Catholic.
Yeah, that's correct. It's Polish on my dad's side, and then
Oh wait, it's Polish on your dad's
oh, on
side.
my mom's side, sorry. And then
Yeah,
on my dad's side, well, my grandma, my father's mother, like completely Italian, so also Catholic from that side as well. I know my dad grew up being an altar server, and then my sister and I were altar servers.
I did that.
Yeah,
I was an altar boy. It's called an altar server now. Is it like gender neutral or
I
something?
I suppose that's why they do that. Yeah, I suppose they couldn't call me an altar boy, but yeah, we were, I guess, pretty involved in the Catholic Church up until I was 13. I had to do what they call like CCD, which is
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
forget the acronym technically, but
Catechism and
yeah,
something or other.
yeah, right. Yeah, any of the public school kids had to go there for their Bible studies. My mom was actually a CCD teacher as well.
The alcoholic CCD teacher.
Right? Yep, exactly. She held it together long enough to get through the class, and then usually she'd get home and she'd be drinking. But yeah, I mean, we were pretty heavily involved. We would go to mass every Sunday, or I'd be altar serving every Sunday, and some of the other things like the person who kind of ran the CCD program. Whenever there would be like on-site events at the church, they always came to me to do like, oh, do you want to do face painting for the kids, because they knew that I had like kind of an artistic talent. And so I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll, come for this event and we can do the face painting and, the kids will have fun. But once I kind of got into high school, that just all kind of dropped off for me. I, I don't like to call myself an atheist because I find that people treat atheism like its own religion. Like people get very intense about it. I'm really not very spiritual. I like learning about theology and I think it's very interesting and I appreciate what the contributions that have been made to like art and literature and all those kinds of things because of Christianity. But I it's not something that I follow personally.
You just lost, but like the Jesus thing just fell away.
Yeah.
There was no big rupture or moment or thing. It just was like a natural dissipation.
Yeah. And I don't know when it kind of crossed my mind where I just didn't believe that God existed, but I guess at some point it just didn't make sense to me. I started trying to think about it much more rationally, I suppose, at some age, and didn't have like couldn't make the leap of faith to believe that there was a creator who made everything and is this all powerful being.
Patriarch.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
just not my thing.
And so now you're just, I mean, atheism, the thing about atheism for me is that it does feel kind of like the other side of the coin of intense
I
religiosity.
For me, I'm just like, I don't want to be involved. Like I'm just like it's
Just keep me out of
yeah,
it.
I'm just like I the way that I have I have semi strong feelings about the way that I look at all religions, and I don't want to say anything that's going to make, people upset, but to me,
Well, you could say anything you want.
I know, yeah, but to me, just the way that I look at it is that all religions come across to me like cults. So I don't want to be involved in any of that. I don't want there to be a rule book or something that I have to follow that tells me how I have to live my life every single day, and that there's, tiers of people who are supposedly more important and can tell me or guide me on, what I should or shouldn't be doing. And there's differing levels of severity, amongst religions, whether they're, you know, some of the big religions or like smaller groups, but I just find it all very just cult like, I suppose. Like you're in it together with a group of people. They're all like trying to follow and do the same thing. They're answering to some piece of text that is telling them what to do, and if you stray from it, it's a big problem. You're going to get punished somehow. And like that fear governing your life and forcing you to make decisions, to me, is it's just not something that I jive with. I'm very much a independent thinker, I suppose.
So, last question, and then I'm going to let you go. If you look back, I mean, we've talked a lot about your upbringing and your past and how you got to this point that you're at now. Is there any memory from your past, wherever it happened along the timeline, that you can point to and say, like, this is something that was really formative for me, or this is like something that I have revisited in my mind or in therapy or in my diary, like whatever it is over the years, that it's just particularly sticky and maybe difficult or memorable for some reason or formative for some reason?
Mm. Huh. That's a difficult one because I find that I have a pretty bad memory. I don't remember a lot of my childhood, which they say can be pretty common for kids who suffer from childhood trauma. But yeah, I don't know if I ever go back to one specific memory. I try to, at least not something that's like motivating for me. I can remember, if I like really dig in my mind, of like the traumatic events that have happened, and those are kind of like scary situations, but I don't really have one specific thing that I think about that like drives me further. I think the thing that drives me further is like my own desire to be self-sufficient, and I can be a little competitive, and I kind of I want to support my dogs, like, so there's just kind of these things that like I am trying to be totally self-reliant, and that is those are the things that I think of that like drive me to be the person that I am now. So
Just so you can, yeah, you don't have to need anyone.
right.
How did you get your second? I lied. I have one more question. How did you get your second dog?
Oh, she is from the shelter down here in Austin. So I adopted her when she was about 2. I did the wrong thing and did not introduce her to my first dog before I adopted her. But fortunately, they get along really well. They're, you know, besties.
What's
So
her name?
her name is Lucy.
Okay, so not like a Polish food product.
No, technically her name is Lucifer. So it's Lucy with an I. But yeah, that is her full name.
Lucifer.
Yeah.
Was that given by you or by the shelter?
That's given by me. Her name was Lucky, actually, at the shelter. But yeah, I kind of have this little long running joke where if I always thought it would be funny to, if I had a daughter and naming her Lucy, but short for Lucifer, and then just kind of like the drama that it would stir up amongst PTA moms once they learn that my child is named after Lucifer. And the thought of that was really funny to me because, there's a lot of like, you hear about all these like crazy spellings of names like Kaylee or Bronley, or, just they're adding eyes onto everything, or an EIGH and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's pretty silly, but I'll just say that that's what I'm doing with Lucy. And then eventually they'll find out that she's named after Satan. And that'll be funny to me. It might not be so funny to them. But then, I decided I'm likely not going to be having kids, at least not anytime soon. So I decided to get a black dog and name her Lucy.
Wow. Okay. I lied again. I just saw your tattoos. I think you have tattoos on your
I
hand.
do, yes.
I always like to ask people, can you describe your tattoos and like tell me why you got them?
Sure. I have a lot of tattoos actually. This is just kind of like a decorative hand tattoo.
Describe what it looks like for people listening. It's like,
So they're like leaves that wrap around two of my fingers. So it's more of like a decorative kind of ornamental type of tattoo. But it kind of meshes in well with one of the other tattoos I have, which is Tengwar, which is the Elvish language from Lord of the Rings. And so it's kind of like within that like art style of like it looks a little bit elvish. So that's on the same arm. And so I have that tattoo. I have tattoos that are for both of my dogs.
what are those? Like a
I
pierogi, like an actual pierogi?
I have Pierogi's paw print on me, and then the tattoo I have for Lucy is actually a Paradise Lost engraving from the book, and then the engravings came out. So it's actually Lucifer falling from the skies. So that's my tribute tattoo to Lucy. I also have a few other pieces. I have a Pegasus. I have a recreation of Dante and Virgil by William Adolph Bergeron, which is one of my favorite art pieces. And I just got on Friday, I got a new tattoo of the rainbow fish from that children's storybook. So that was one of my favorite books when I was a kid because I just liked looking at the sparkly pages. But I thought it would make a cute tattoo. And then I just have like a half sleeve that's like decorative, like flowers and paintbrush strokes on my arm. So yeah, quite a lot of tattoos at this point.
It's kind of like an addiction of its own,
A
right?
little bit, yeah.
Nobody just gets one tattoo, I feel
No,
like.
no. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like as soon as your tattoo appointment's over, you're like thinking about the next one. So
Are there like places you won't go? Like, is the face tattoo off limits? Is the neck tattoo like you're not going
yeah,
to do that? It's just
no, not
arms,
yeah. For me, probably arms. I'll eventually move to legs, and that's probably where I'll keep them.
and then eventually what? Then you got to get them all taken off so you can start over
Yeah,
again.
refresh, a little refresh, or just like trying to fill in every little nook and cranny with something that means something to me, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it has been a delight to speak with you. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a great time chatting with you, and hopefully this was a enlightening conversation for the first episode.
Okay, there we have it. That was the first character study on the Otherppl podcast, a conversation with Sophia, age 34, a customer success manager in Texas. Pretty good, right? Super fascinating and a great conversation with Sophia. My thanks to her. Once again, if you are listening to this episode and you know someone who might be a good guest for this new character study series, please email me at letters@otherppl.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this show wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on social media, Bluesky and Instagram. Sign up for my newsletter over at Substack. And if you like the work that I do, if you appreciate this show and you want to see it continue, I hope you will join the Otherppl Patreon community over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. If you would like to get an Otherppl t-shirt or a sweatshirt, you can do that at otherppl.com, the show's official website. Sign up for the Otherppl book club while you're there. And don't forget to check out my new venture. I have a new company in the works. It is called Deep Dive, and it specializes in long-form educational audio. It will be officially launching later this year. And the very first course from Deep Dive is called How to Write a Novel. More than 50 hours of never-before-heard conversations with dozens of today's leading writers, all about how to write a novel. I'm very excited about it. You can check out the Deep Dive website at www.deepdive.audio, and you can follow Deep Dive on Instagram and Bluesky. If you have a couple of minutes and you want to do me a quick favor, please give this show a rating wherever you listen. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. Rate it, review it. It helps the show find new listeners. All right, so coming up on Tuesday, there will be a new author interview here on the podcast. I will be in conversation with Lidia Yuknavitch, who is returning to the show for the first time in, I believe, almost 8 years. I had a wonderful conversation with Lidia Yuknavitch. She has a new memoir out right now. It is called Reading the Waves, and it is superb. So you don't want to miss my conversation with Lidia Yuknavitch coming up on Tuesday.